If you were to drive past it on Highway 1, you would see a massive concrete block covered with graffiti, and you'd think that somebody started a building project and then abandoned it.
The idea of the bunkers was to be, first of all, a hiding place, and as I understand it, mainly a spotting place.
Well, the bunker was constructed in the context of World War II, the ones on Devil's Slide.
They're out scanning the horizon looking for dangerous things.
On December 7th, 1941, Japan, like its infamous Axis partners, struck first and declared war afterwards.
The United States got involved in World War II militarily after the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941.
We probably should have seen it coming. There had been some indications that this was going to happen.
This was a major event, similar to, I guess, what 9/11 would be in your lifetime. We were attacked, and we had to respond.
Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment. But more costly to Japan was the effectiveness of its foul attack in immediately unifying America in its determination to fight and win the war thrust upon it.
And from that instant on, from that day of infamy until the end of the war, Americans, especially the Americans right here on the California coast, were feeling threatened.
Right after Pearl Harbor, the military actually moved in and set up fortifications all along the West Coast.
There is still fear that the Japanese will be able to make an attack or at least an approach to the California coast.
Well, you have to keep in mind that this was a major world war, and the threat was certainly there, that the enemy could attack the West Coast at any time. We knew that they had the capability, and so we had to be diligent and be looking out for that.
I don't want to say we were defenseless, but we were certainly not in a good position to defend ourselves as well as we could have before the attack on Pearl Harbor.
America lost 3 destroyers. Here are seen the United States destroyers Downs and Shore as they rest on the bottom of Pearl Harbor with decks awash after Jap bombers make direct hits on their decks.
Because I happened to grow up as a kid during World War II, all of my family, the older uncles, were all off to war, so we had a very first-hand, close look at what scared the heck out of everybody in America after Pearl Harbor.
There were a few reports of some possible submarine attacks up and down the coast, and I think there were even some accounts of enemy aircraft attacks further up north.
War Command from San Francisco had told the Coastsiders that attack was likely, and certainly what I remember in those days was that sirens would go off in the middle of the night, and those were the air raid sirens.
No doubt it was fear that stimulated the founding of those fortifications.
Fear is one of the great motivators of Americans. We're willing to give up our freedoms in return for security. And it's never a good trade-off.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens.
Now, that's where the narrative gets more interesting, because the United States government did a massive investigation of all Japanese Americans along the Pacific coast.
People watched each other carefully. The Japanese were of a different race, and that fear would play a role.
We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous.
The idea that they're suspicious, they look different, they sound different, and the stereotype that they're all helping the emperor.
No one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores.
The Japanese Americans who lived in California, unfortunately, were sent to internment camps. There were some here on the coast side, and some of the coast side residents too, unfortunately, some of them who were very well known and respected, had to be put in these camps, and that was very unfortunate.
The prevalent attitude about Japanese and Japanese Americans was, and I'm quoting directly, "a Jap's a Jap."
Neither the Army nor the War Relocation Authority relished the idea of taking men, women, and children from their homes, their shops, and their farms. So the military and civilian agencies alike determined to do the job as a democracy should, with real consideration for the people involved.
Now this really isn't something new, unfortunately. Xenophobia is something that's been with humanity probably since the beginning of time. It's manifested itself in prejudice and racism against different groups. During World War II, it was the Japanese.
Who of course had the misfortune of not only being the enemy that was to the west, but also they had the misfortune of having a different skin color.
There is certainly fear of different ethnic groups today within California and within the Bay Area.
We tend to want to scapegoat people, and it really very much relates to what happened with the Japanese, in that Americans were fearful, and we wanted to somehow get control of the situation by getting control of these Japanese. And we're doing the same thing with Muslims and Mexicans. And we have yet not come to terms what it means to be American.
The bunkers were set up for a very practical purpose. It was for military defense. That defense became unnecessary after a while, and so it fell into decay as a symbol of the end of an era and the beginning of something else.